Today, I'm talking about the Hyperion Tempo versus the Boston 9. .0 miles in the Hyperion Tempo and 11.85 miles in the Boston 9, running in each of these shoes this week so that I can compare them head to head. But before I get into my thoughts on these two shoes compared against each other, I do want to go over some disclosures. These are shoes that I both bought with my own money. No one's going to reimburse me for the purchase price of these shoes. No one's going to pay me to make this video. And no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my thoughts or footage before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. Now, the disclosures out of the way, let's talk about the Hyperion Tempo versus the Boston 9. With the Hyperion Tempo, what we have is an 8mm heel drop shoe coming in at a very light 7.3 ounces with a very flexible, breathable, but comfortable upper and this magnificent DNA flash foam in the midsole. With the Boston 9, what we have is a 10mm drop, 8.6 ounce shoe that comes in a little bit heavier, but has a little bit of boost and that new Lightstrike material, which Adidas has been rolling out. Now, how are they similar and how are they different? The way that they're similar is I think that these are very fast shoes to run in. I really enjoy both of these. These are two of probably my favorite shoes so far to run in for this year. They're both shoes that I would strongly consider to not only train for my next marathon or half marathon in, but that I also could see myself racing those distances in as well. And I also think that these shoes are not necessarily everyday trainers. They can certainly do those kinds of runs where you're just going out there for some easy miles. I think there's other shoes that are better suited for that. And these shoes really tend to shine when you're on a longer run and going for some of those faster paces. Now, in terms of how these shoes are different, I think that this shoe, the Hyperion Tempo, is a more cushioned shoe. Not only does it have more stack height, I feel like the foam that's in here is more cushioned and absorbs impact from the road a little bit better. Now, in either of these two shoes, they're not gonna have that immense step-in comfort that you're thinking about from, like, say, a max cushion shoe or from like a recovery sandal or something that's super, super soft. These are firm shoes, but the firmness becomes soft and cushioned when you're using these shoes for their intended purpose, which is for those longer, fast runs. With the Boston 9, you're getting a little bit more of that old school feel where there isn't a ton of stack height in here. There is cushion with that boost that's in here, but it's used very sparingly, which I think works out really well for it. And the Lightstrike that's also in here helps you get through the gait cycle really quickly. So it's a little bit more stripped down of a feeling in the midsole, but throughout the entire shoe as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we're talking about the upper. I think that the upper here feels a lot more like an old school shoe, but with a modern twist for 2020. Now, I've always felt like with all the lace loops that are available in this shoe, there's just so many compared to most other shoes that are coming out these days. They're really emphasizing that you can get a snug fit and lockdown feel when your foot is in the shoe, and it certainly applies here. Everything feels very snug and comfortable for those efforts, which you are going to be running a little bit longer and a little bit faster. And it really reminds me of some of the ways that racing shoes used to look and feel. But there's a modern twist to it as well, as I feel like they've expanded the toe box in a lot of their shoes from Adidas this year, but in the Boston 9 especially. It just feels like there's a little bit more room to play with in here, a little bit more space for your foot, while also still maintaining that lockdown feel without having any undue pressure points. So I think it's a welcome change from last year. I could be imagining it. I haven't run in the Boston 8 in quite a while, but this Boston 9 does feel to be a little bit more comfortable than I remember the Boston 8 being. So that, I think, is a bit of an improvement. Now, in terms of the upper on the Hyperion Tempo, I've had problems with this upper in the past. I mean, problems not the right word for it. I think I've had nits to pick with the upper on this shoe before. I do love how floppy and flexible and breathable this material is that's in the upper, but with the stretchy laces that they've also put into this shoe, I felt that there was too many like flexible things to put into a shoe upper that could become problematic at faster speeds. Now, for the run that I went on with this week for the shoe, the 15-mile run, that was a Fartlek Run where I was running 1 mile on, 1 mile off. That 1 mile on being at about marathon pace, maybe a little bit slower than that. Although there's rolling hills in this area, some steep hills, uphills and downhills as well. So sometimes I was going faster, sometimes I was going slower. But at about those marathon efforts, I didn't really notice an issue. I do remember in prior runs though, running at tempo paces, and this is the Hyperion Tempo. When I ran in the tempo paces, it felt like the upper just wasn't doing enough of a job at keeping me locked in, because I think it had a lot to do with those stretchy laces that are up here. It never became a problem. It always just kind of felt like it was about to become a problem. So not a huge deal, just something that I had to get used to. And maybe I have gotten used to it, because today or this week on the run that I had with this shoe, it wasn't something that I noticed at all. All I noticed was that it was a very snug, comfortable fit. Not quite as roomy as in the Boston 9, but still a very comfortable upper for this type of shoe. Now, the last thing I'll talk about in terms of the differences in these two shoes is that I've been running not only a lot of road surfaces and hill surfaces, but I'm not always used to doing when I'm running on my home turf in Chicago. But here in Iowa, I have not only hills to deal with, but there's also a lot of dirt roads, or if I'm running on the side of the road, I'm running on the shoulder, there's a lot of dirt roads that I'm running on there too. There's also a lot of grass that I can run in as well, some softer surfaces, which are a very welcome change of pace that my body is enjoying. But what I have noticed in some subtle differences in terms of the outsole patterns that these two shoes offer, if I were to kind of give different grades on them, I would say that I prefer the Hyperion Tempo on the rocky stuff, and I prefer the Boston 9 on the grassy stuff. This stretch web pattern just gives me a little bit more confidence when it comes to things like grass that can be wet, and typically is a little bit wet when I'm out there running in the mornings here. When I'm on the dirt, a lot of the times it's pretty similar for both when it's just a really nice buffed out road surface. It's really soft, it's really nice, it's great to run on both of these shoes. But if there is a little bit of rockiness to it, and on some of the inclines and declines, there are usually rocks laid down to give cars and trucks a little bit more traction. On those, I generally find that I'm trying to avoid the rockiest rocks, the biggest rocks, when I'm in the Boston 9. I don't quite do that as much when I'm in the Hyperion Tempo. I think it's, again, just all this stack height that's in here and the ability of this foam to soak up some of those more uncomfortable surfaces that I might be running on. So I'll give the edge in rocky roads or dirt roads to the Hyperion Tempo. Not that either of these shoes is really intended to be an off-road or a trail running shoe, but to the extent that I have mixed surfaces to run on, I think that the Hyperion Tempo has been a little bit better on some of those craggier surfaces. Now, in the end, I think that both of these are really fantastic shoes to run your long, faster efforts in, and I've been really enjoying both. The Hyperion Tempo is a little bit more expensive at $150, but I think very much well worth it, because I just love this shoe, and this is the shoe that I'm going to give the edge to in this head-to-head battle. I just like running in it a little bit more. So those are my thoughts on the Hyperion Tempo versus the Boston 9. I'm sure that there's so many of you that are going to disagree with me on my opinion, and I'd love to hear about that in the comments down below. That's all I have for today. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video, and hope you guys are staying safe out there. I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?